Most people think manifestation is about thinking harder, visualizing longer, or believing more intensely. So when it doesn't work, they assume they didn't do it right. They question their mindset, they question their faith, they question themselves. But very few people stop to ask a deeper question. What emotional state am I actually living in while I'm trying to manifest? Because manifestation doesn't respond to words. It doesn't respond to affirmations, and it doesn't respond to effort. It responds to emotional environment. You can think positive thoughts while living in tension. You can visualize abundance while emotionally braced. You can want change while internally preparing for disappointment. And when that's the case, nothing moves. Not because you're doing something wrong, but because your system isn't in a state that allows receiving. Most people don't realize this, but manifestation doesn't fail because of doubt. It fails because of incongruence. The mind may be focused on what it wants, but the body is focused on staying safe. So the system sends mixed signals. On the surface, you're asking for more. Underneath, you're bracing for loss. You're monitoring outcomes. You're emotionally preparing for it not to work. And that emotional posture matters, because manifestation doesn't move through force. It moves through permission. Permission to receive without bracing. Permission to move forward without protection. Permission to allow change without preparing for collapse. This is why some people manifest effortlessly while others struggle endlessly. It's not because one group believes more. It's because one group lives in emotional states that don't resist expansion. Calm instead of tension. Openness instead of vigilance. Stability instead of urgency. And until those conditions exist internally, manifestation will always feel inconsistent. You may see brief results, small wins, temporary movement, but nothing that lasts. Because lasting change doesn't enter systems that are emotionally closed. And most people don't realize how closed they are while trying to create something new. They're waiting for proof before they relax. But the truth is, relaxation is the condition that allows proof to arrive. And until that reverses, manifestation will always feel like something you're trying to make happen instead of something that responds to you. When manifestation doesn't move, it's rarely because you're doing too little. It's because your emotional state isn't ready to receive what you're asking for. To understand the emotional conditions that allow a manifestation, you first have to see which emotional states quietly block it. And most of them don't look negative. They look responsible. They look cautious. They look realistic. States like constant vigilance, subtle anxiety, emotional bracing, quiet self-protection, monitoring instead of trusting. From the outside, these states seem harmless. From the inside, they create resistance. Because manifestation isn't filtered through your thoughts alone, it's filtered through your nervous system. Your system is always signaling one thing: how safe does expansion feel right now? And for many people, expansion feels conditional. They relax after things work. They open up after proof arrives. They trust after certainty appears. But manifestation doesn't respond to after. It responds to now. This is where the misunderstanding happens. People believe they're being patient, when in reality, they're staying emotionally guarded. They believe they're being grounded when they're actually staying braced. And that brace communicates something very specific. More would overwhelm me. So the system holds the line, not as punishment, not as judgment, but as protection. Here's the key shift. Manifestation doesn't move toward desire. It moves toward emotional availability. Availability to receive without gripping. Availability to expand without monitoring. Availability to let things work without managing every step. This is why urgency weakens manifestation. Urgency tells the system This must happen now or something is wrong. That signal creates pressure. Pressure closes emotional space, and closed systems don't receive new outcomes, they defend existing ones. This is also why some people manifest easily during periods when they're not trying. They're relaxed, they're present, they're not scanning for results. Their emotional state is open, not passive, but receptive. And that distinction matters. Receptivity is not giving up. It's allowing movement without tension attached. Once you understand this, you stop asking, why isn't it working yet? And start noticing, what emotional state am I reinforcing every day? Because whatever state you live in consistently becomes the condition through which manifestation responds. When emotional availability replaces emotional bracing, manifestation stops feeling distant and starts responding more easily. Here's the part most people never see clearly. The emotional states that block manifestation are often the same ones they believe are helping them. Tension feels like effort. Urgency feels like commitment. Monitoring feels like responsibility. So people stay inside those states thinking they're doing the right thing. But emotionally, those states send a very different message. They say, I don't trust this to work. I am preparing for disappointment. I need to stay alert or I'll lose control. And manifestation doesn't respond to those signals. Because manifestation is not a negotiation between what you want and what you deserve. It's a response to what you're consistently embodying. When tension becomes normal, your system is signaling that expansion is unsafe. When urgency becomes constant, your system is signaling that stability is fragile. When monitoring becomes habitual, your system is signaling that trust isn't available yet. And these signals matter, not symbolically, physiologically. A system that's braced is not open. A system that's scanning is not receiving. A system that's protecting itself is not allowing change to settle. This is why a manifestation often works briefly, then collapses. People relax after a small win. They open emotionally for a moment. They stop monitoring, and things move. But then they tighten again. They start watching results. They start measuring outcomes. They start guarding the progress. And the emotional conditions close. This creates a cycle. Brief movement, followed by contraction, followed by frustration. Not because manifestation stopped, but because the emotional environment changed. Here's the deeper truth. Manifestation doesn't require belief. It requires emotional permission. Permission to let things unfold without gripping the outcome. Permission to remain steady even when results aren't visible yet. Permission to experience expansion without immediately asking what could go wrong. That permission isn't created by thinking differently. It's created by relating differently to uncertainty. And until that relationship shifts, manifestation will feel inconsistent. Not because you lack power, but because your system hasn't learned how to stay open under expansion. When you stop managing the outcome emotionally, you create the conditions where outcomes can finally move. So if manifestation responds to emotional conditions, the real question becomes, how do you create openness without drifting into passivity? Because emotional availability doesn't mean letting go of direction. And it doesn't mean sitting back and hoping. It means removing tension from the way you relate to outcomes. The first condition is emotional steadiness. Steadiness doesn't mean feeling good all the time. It means not swinging between anticipation and collapse. You allow desire to exist without emotionally leaning into it. You allow uncertainty to exist without tightening against it. This teaches your system something important. We don't need to brace for what hasn't happened yet. The second condition is non-monitoring. Monitoring looks subtle, checking signs, replaying conversations, measuring progress internally. asking yourself if it's working. Each time you do this, you reintroduce pressure, not outward pressure, internal pressure, and pressure closes emotional space. Non-monitoring doesn't mean ignoring your life. It means not emotionally hovering over outcomes. You move forward, you take aligned action, and then you let the system breathe. The third condition is self-trust, not confidence in the outcome, but trust in your ability to remain grounded regardless of what happens. This is crucial. When your system trusts that you won't abandon yourself if things don't go perfectly, it relaxes. And relaxed systems receive more easily. This is why people who've been through adversity sometimes manifest more effortlessly later in life. They've learned they can survive disappointment, so they don't need to brace against it. And that lack of bracing creates emotional openness. The final condition is permission to receive. Many people want more, but haven't emotionally allowed themselves to live in expansion. They're waiting for permission, from proof, from certainty, from external validation. But manifestation doesn't wait for permission. It responds when permission is already present, when receiving doesn't feel dangerous, when having more doesn't feel like pressure, when growth doesn't feel like exposure. When these conditions exist, manifestation stops feeling forced, not because you stopped wanting, but because wanting no longer comes with tension. When emotional openness becomes your baseline, manifestation stops responding to effort and starts responding to alignment. When you stop trying to force manifestation and start focusing on the emotional conditions that allow it, something important shifts. You stop waiting for results to tell you how to feel. You stop tightening when nothing seems to be happening. You stop scanning your life for evidence. You stop treating desire like something fragile. Instead, you settle, not into passivity, but into presence. You live from a state that doesn't need immediate confirmation to remain open. And from that state, manifestation becomes less dramatic and more consistent. It stops arriving as sudden spikes followed by emotional crashes. It starts arriving as steady movement, often in ways you weren't tracking, because when you're no longer emotionally hovering, you give life room to rearrange itself. This is the paradox most people miss. The more relaxed you are internally, the more responsive your external world becomes. Not because you stop caring, but because care is no longer entangled with fear. You still take action. You still make decisions. You still move toward what matters, but you do it without gripping the outcome. And that changes the signal you're sending. Instead of, I need this to work, the signal becomes, I can receive whatever unfolds. That signal is calm, it's open, it's stable, and stability is what allows manifestation to land without disruption. This is why the most aligned people don't talk much about manifesting. They're not performing it. They're not watching it. They're not managing it. They're living in the emotional states that naturally invite movement. And when manifestation becomes a byproduct instead of a goal, it stops being something you chase. It becomes something that meets you where you already are.